Hi, everyone. This is Ray Luskin. I'm an award-winning author, artist, activist, and creative mindfulness mentor. And welcome to our Women Who Dare conference. Really, it's a summit. These are wonderful women I have been so delighted to meet, and some I knew before. And we're gathering at the intersection of art, health, and social change. And today, my guest is Dana Saroken. She's Rabbi Dana Saroken. And we actually just met January 7th this last year. So I'm very excited to have her here. She was an ordained rabbi in 2004. She worked for an organization, City Jewish Center in New York, and then joined Temple Beth in Baltimore in 2007 and was the congregation's first female rabbi. Today, she is still there, and she also opened Soul Center in 2016. And that's where we met. And I just want to, one more accolade though, I want to share. So this year, Dana was named one of the Jewish Women's International 10 Women to Watch. So I'm really excited to have Dana here. She has been my spiritual counselor since January, and I'm in Chicago. So this was a whole new deal for me, finding my home in working with her over the last 9 months, really. So thank you, Dana, for being here. Why don't you tell people a little bit about Soul Center, why you started it, and we'll start there.
Well, first I'll just say thank you for thanks for having me. It's really nice to have this time with you and at the Women Who Dare Summit. I love even the name of that. It excites me. So the Soul Center began actually almost 5 years ago. It'll be 5 years this year in November. And it was really a response and a dream that it was a response to the amount of Jews all over our country that were sort of saying that they were spiritual, but not religious. And it was really sort of an exploration that it began with, which was, what does that mean when people say that? Like, are they running from their Judaism? Are they running to spirituality? And if people are defining themselves as spiritual, like, how do they foster that sense of spirituality in their own lives? And then what ended up happening is we sort of planted seeds. We decided that we were going to just do like sort of a sandbox, if you will, experimentation year, and to see if we could help people to deepen their own sense of spirituality, to bring spirituality into Judaism, to bring Judaism, to infuse that with spirituality, and then to really see if we could bring sort of the ancient wisdom and rituals and all that is beautiful within our traditions and bring it into real people's lives, and recognizing that real people's lives are actually typically overflowing.
Well, I love that because I am that person who has been there for many, many years searching for, because I always felt I was spiritual, but I didn't connect to Judaism in the way that I have now. I've learned so much in the last, 9 months. And what's amazing is my son is conservative, and he's been studying, and we have a whole new connection because of this. And that just, I was just out there in California, and it was so delightful. I don't remember ever going, his friends had a sukkah on Shabbat, and we went there for dinner, and, the whole prayer service, and then conversations about mindfulness at the table. It was delightful because that's what you bring to the table. Is let's talk about the pillars, how you use yoga and mindfulness as part of this practice.
Sure. So, really from the beginning, one of the things that we were finding is that, in our lives today, in our world today, there's just so much, and again, sort of the pandemic has shifted this a bit, but there's so much busyness, which people oftentimes sort of wear as a badge of honor. It's like, how are you? Busy, things are crazy. It's sort of a response that you're like, oh, okay. In order to like affirm that I have value and worth in the world, I've got to be busy, so there's that goes on. And then there's just sort of a noisiness in the world. There's just this sense that like, I feel like, I'm on with you, and I've got my phone next to me, and I've got like all of these things that are just sort of happening where there's a lot of like interruptions in our lives. There's a lot of beeping. There's a lot of, sort of a background of chaos or noise. And so just that question, that really sort of arose for me is how can we give people the opportunity to practice just being? A lot of times we sort of define ourselves by what we do as opposed to like who we are. And so the question is like, could we take yoga? Could we take meditation? Could we take drumming circles? Can we take, sort of all of these different practices, right? Zen tingling, which we offer.
And I just want to let people know this is online. Some of it's online now and some is not, because I don't think people necessarily understand that. So that's how I connected. My sister sent me the Zentangle link. And then, I saw what you were doing. I'm like, oh, I got to check this out. And then I've just been a regular. And I have to say the connections and the people who have been on these calls are amazing. But it is possible to create community online, which I don't think people thought was really capable, until COVID. So go ahead. Sorry.
No. I actually think that's a super interesting point, right? Like, so what we do at the Soul Center is we try to honor that, again, sort of like our demographic is, starts in like the late 40s or like 46, I would say, for some reason. And, we want to just honor that, like, people don't have an abundance of time, or, before the pandemic, we didn't. And so we want to really make use of and make sure that every like minute that they're giving, to the Soul Center, to what we're offering, feels like there's value added in their lives. And so it's been an interesting thing. So what we do is we actually take all of these, sort of, in this case, mindfulness forms, and we have sort of the best of leaders that are available, I think, in our country and our world. And then we pair them up with wisdom leaders who infuse Judaism and Jewish wisdom into that practice. So whatever we're doing, there's always sort of what we call the Jewish twist. But what you tapped into, Ray, which is super interesting also, is just this sort of virtual community. So you're right. Like, before we started, we had this incredible group of people who were participating in Soul Center programs. But then, as the pandemic hit, we just sort of exploded. I mean, you mentioned Zentangling. You come on for a Zentangling, and like, there are over 100 people that are Zentangling on Sundays together, and that have really actually sort of relied on this practice, which is sort of a mindful doodling almost, that's facilitated. And, I feel like for me, like, when I go to doodle, I know how to make hearts and I know how to make balloons. Like, they're like, from when I was 5. But this is actually like, it is, for those people who don't like to sit and sort of like do yoga or to meditate, like, Zen tingling is a beautiful way to just sort of like come down off of like the rush, right? To just sort of like take an hour and to be led to like quiet and to like ourselves and to each other and to like just that peaceful place. And what you were saying is entirely true, that being virtual means that like people are coming to us from all over the country, and sometimes even outside of the country, because it's so easy and it's so accessible. And, many of our programs don't even have a charge. People are generous enough to make donations and gifts to us so that we can keep doing what we're doing. So people can jump in and try any program or any session. And I think immediately, as you experienced, you really do see that, you might think that it's the Zentangling, but then it becomes like this combination of.
Well, and hearing the rabbi always give some little parsha, beforehand, and I've learned about the holidays or whatever, and how it all comes together. And that was a surprise to me. I looked at it as an art practice, for myself, and meditative. I mean, when I talk to people about developing their creativity, I always say, well, you can get a mandala coloring book, things like that, which is very similar to this, but you're actually creating the mandala. So, the detail, but it's using black and white, and that, I loved it, and I've used it with my grandkids. We made Father's Day cards, doing that. So,
it's interesting what you say, right? Because I think in some ways, right, like, people are very surprised by their own creative, abilities. But I also think, like, for me, one of the things that I love about Zentangling is that, I oftentimes want things that I'm working on to be like perfect or beautiful or extraordinary, whatever all of that means. And I think one of the things that I took out of Zentangling is like, actually, it doesn't have to be in order to be even more beautiful, right? Like, oftentimes it's like the bumps or the place where like, oh, you want to out of that, web that feels like it is uniquely beautiful. And I think that just has application to the way that we live and experience like ourselves in our lives.
I think most of us, we make mistakes and then we beat ourselves up. I think Zentangling gives us an opportunity to say, oh, what else could I learn from this? Or it's a teachable moment rather than beat yourself up. And I think
Sure.
that's been really, I mean, I practice that. So, but for other people, I know it's been, wow, I've never experienced, I can do that.
Yeah.
You know, I can
Yeah.
be an artist, because we put the label of an artist, you know, for creative. And I think creativity is more than being an artist, but this is just one piece of it. So
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you about gratitude, because when the first time I heard you say, get out your gratitude journals, I was like, oh, I'm home, because I have a practice that I always write gratitude. I've been
Yeah.
doing that since 1985. So it's been a long time. But to actually have somebody come out and say, get your journal out, and, and you give some really interesting prompts. So why don't you talk about the value of gratitude?
Yeah. So the context that you're speaking of, Ray, is that at the beginning of this pandemic, we started, it's called a soul boost. And that is basically takes the form of like 25 minutes or a half an hour every morning that we come together, and everyone, of course, is always welcome. It's the most beautiful group that sort of like opens up the arms wide to embrace others. And basically it's a community of people that, do praying and mindfulness and meditation and gratitude work together really every day. So the gratitude part, for me, I feel like I've been in gratitude practice, as you have, for many years. And I just sort of share the things that I've learned, but I've also tried out new things along the way. So, each day, I invite people to do, depending on the day, like I find that like, gratitudes are really easy on Monday. They're typically easy on Friday. Wednesday, they tend to like get a little harder. So depending on the day, we'll go, oftentimes I'll say between 7 and 10, sometimes, I don't know if you remember, Ray, but we used to do 3 to 5. Like we
Right.
really have sort of increased. And I always tell people, like, as specific as you can be. Like, I don't love the idea, like if you ask people, what are you grateful for? They tend to go to sort of general spaces, which are like, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my friends, I'm grateful for my home, I'm grateful for my job. But what I like to like invite people to do is really to sort of like hone in far beyond that, to get to the particulars, right? So I might be grateful for my family, right? Which of course I am. But like within that, like what is real, what is true, what is now, like
Right.
living
It's like,
within my heart.
today, when I was just got back from California, being with my grandkids for the first time out there, and I, my gratitude was I got to spend time. I took each of the girls shopping by themselves, for their birthdays. And we spent a couple hours together and had this intimate conversation, and I got to know them in different ways. So it is taking it deeper, because then it's like, oh, who are they? And how are they in relationship with me? And what did we learn from each
Yeah.
other? And I think those are really important. And I think the other one that I remember that you were talking about, I'm trying to remember, was you or somebody else, was talking about looking around your home. What are the stories your objects tell you, that you're grateful for? Because that's the memory of, I went shopping here, I went on this trip there, and it takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
that's really key. And they've done research, as you've talked about, the gratitude keeps us healthier. It does, so.
Yeah, for sure. And I think also, I mean, I always try different, like there are different techniques, as you're sort of, as you're alluding to, sometimes we, I'll say like dive deeper into your gratitudes that you already have written, because as you said, right, I'm grateful for, you could have said, I'm grateful for the trip to California. But like, then if you dig deeper into that, and I'm grateful for like the time that it afforded me with each of my grandchildren. And beyond that, I'm grateful that it gave me like the opportunity to have conversations that enabled me to know them better. And then like, what's underneath that? What I came to realize is, you know what I mean? Like, so I think that like, if you
We don't do that enough. I think you're right. We get on this road, it's like, oh, I'm grateful I had a shower, or I have a bed, and that's fine. If that's all you
Yeah.
can do that day, that's okay. But if you can go beyond, I think you've opened up
Yeah.
to awe and wonder. And I think that's part of what gratitude at least does for me. And that means joy.
Yeah. And it's funny. I love what you said, because I think in some ways, right, like, I remember when I was, had newborn children, like gratitude for taking a shower was like, that was legit. That was
Right.
real, but nowadays, like, oh, I don't really feel grateful for taking a shower, for making time for a shower, but I will say, like, every once in a while, like, I'll get a new bar of like Pink Dove soap or like the new conditioner or whatever.
Right.
And
And
like,
your hair
no,
smells
it smells good
wonderful.
or it
Yeah,
feels good. Like,
exactly.
and I think that part of that is like just recognizing, especially this, for the past year and a half, that like sometimes it's just simple stuff. It's simple stuff. And I think, you know, thinking about that and revisiting it, we do the gratitudes together in the morning. I really love gratitude practices in the night. Like, I think that's an amazing thing to do before you go to bed, because most of us actually before we go to bed are, I don't know if I'm the only crazy one, but like usually before I go to bed, I go through my emails real fast, very quickly.
I've shut off my phone and everything 2 hours before now. It's been about 3 weeks, but it's really helping me to do that, to just disengage. And yeah, so I know I have
I
journals
love
all over the
that.
house to write, kind of thing. I'd
Mm,
rather be reading something positive or learning something new rather than being
yeah,
on my devices. And we can all get hooked. And I think that's a really good key, is to disengage and give
I
us
love it.
a time or a day to do that.
So
Yeah,
Ray, it's funny, the new practice that I just adopted this past month that I'm loving. I don't even remember who offered it to me, but they said to choose to just have 3 things on your to-do list each
you
day.
mentioned that. Yeah,
And that is making me so happy. And I love that there's always like a lingering fourth that I'm like, ooh, like maybe I'll squeeze that in, or maybe it'll be a run-on sentence and I can like get 2 things into one. But what I actually love is like, okay, I can do 3 things. I probably can't realistically do the 18 things on my list, prior to the month. And those other, the other 15 things are still waiting, but like they're going to have another day. And I actually really love it. In fact, I'm waiting for my kids to be like, hey, mom, can you? And I'm going to be like, oh, I already have 3 things today.
so do you do your list at night or do you do it in the morning?
No, I do it in the morning. I do
Okay,
it in the
yeah,
morning. Yeah. I feel like in the morning is when I feel sort of like flooded with like things that I should or could do. And so choosing 3 actually is really helpful. And then, what we do in the morning also is to set what we call a kavana, which is to set an intention for the
I was
day.
just going to ask you about, why don't you share that practice, because I
Yeah.
think that's really key.
So that practice actually is like a question of like just writing down, and I always, I'll say we all have gratitude journals in the group of the morning gratitude group. So we use those, and I like to have them in there with it. But I always say, like, then put it on a sticky note, like put it up. So the guide, it's basically your kavana is your intention, or it could be, your sort of guiding force or your North Star in your day. So basically what that would look like is, just asking yourself each day, like, what is it that I need to remember in order to endure this day, to manage this day, to thrive in this day, whatever it is. And so each day that really will change. Like, as you know, Ray, like there are some days that like, my kavana or my intention might be like one thing at a time, because there's so much like sort of
Right,
coming at me at once. But other days it might be like, be joyful,
right. Have fun,
or
play. Yeah,
yeah, or like prioritize family, or you know what I mean? I feel
right.
like
I
each
know
day
today I
requires
did
a
that. I
new,
try and do that in the morning as well. I have a meditation practice before I get on with, the morning gratitude, where there are some people I listen to that I like or whatever, or, and I find for me that, I do set it. And like today I needed calm. I'm interviewing 4 people today. So it was like, okay, I need to be calm, and just
yeah,
what does that mean? And take those steps.
yeah,
I realized like today that the Zoom didn't go out, to you. So I said, okay, I sent a Zoom and I talked to my virtual assistant. She sent the link, and I didn't go crazy. I could have been like, and I
right,
didn't.
right.
So it is important to set that.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that, okay, I've got 2 things. I know we have just a few more minutes with Dana today. That let's talk about Hippadoot. I find that practice has been very helpful to me, and I never
Mm-hmm.
heard of that before. So
Yeah. Yeah, great. So I would say that so heat bodedut is and it's such a like funny spelling even for anyone who's listening. It's if I were doing it in English, I would say like HITBODEDUT, heat bodedut. And it's really a practice that Rabbi Nachman many years ago created. Rabbi Nachman actually, he struggled with depression. And the way that he went about sort of enduring his days is that he, sorry, my dog's here, that he would go out into nature, and out in nature, he would have conversations with God. And the idea for us is that, you know, look, if you can go out into nature, that's wonderful. But I don't even know that, I think nature inspired him and brought him, you know, to that place where he felt most closely connected to God. But I actually think like, if you want to go out to nature, great. If you want to do it in your room, great. Like, I don't think it really matters. I think the gist of it is that you're in a constant conversation with God, right? So, you know, within the context of our morning gratitude group, you know, I oftentimes, for whatever reason, have sort of like set that at 4 minutes, you know, to have a 4-minute conversation. And that feels, I think, really doable. And one of the things I'm sure that you noticed is that, like, you know, all of a sudden, you know, what my only rule for the conversation is do it out loud. So it's audible in your own ears, and don't stop talking. Right. So even if you're going to say to God, like, I don't know what to say next, this is awkward, whatever, but like still keep on talking. And it's actually a very beautiful thing, because I find that, like, you know, I think for me, this is one of like my deepest approaches to prayer, because when, you know, when you say things out loud to God, you know, you're like going real. And like, there are times where I'm talking to God and I'm telling God my to-do list, and I'm like, oh God, you don't want to hear my to-do list, right? Like, okay, what else? And then like sort of just going back to the things that actually really matter. So I would say that if anyone's interested in the practice, what I would, you know, recommend doing is to really just set your alarm on your telephone and to give yourself a certain amount of time. I do like a 4-minute. I think it's a good amount of time, and then you can grow from there. But then just literally open up to God, right? Like, here I am. I know this is weird. Someone told me to have this like conversation with you out loud. So here I go. Let me tell you what's going on lately, like whatever it might be.
Right.
And then the other approach that of course, you know, I like to use is the sort of framework for Jewish prayer, which is wow, help, and thanks. So dear God, wow, dear God, help, dear God, thanks, and give people the space to just fill in the middles. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that really works. I would love for you to just do a little bit of practice, you know, that we've done, you know, and you know, our hand on our heart. I think
Sure.
that'd be a great way for us to end this conversation, if you would like to lead us.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I like to do each day is to just sort of give ourselves a little bit of extra love. And one of the ways that I think we can do that, and this is sort of just depending on who you are and what you need, and, you know, what happens in your mind, is to start the day just with your hand over your heart, and to just give yourself the opportunity to sort of quiet, still down, and to just feel maybe it's the weight, maybe it's the heat of your hand over your heart. And to just exhale. Taking a deep breath in. Breath out. Another. And another. And with your hand over your heart, it's going to feel potentially awkward to people, but take a moment and say good morning. Fill in your name and I love you.
Or to say, I
And good. And then what we do a lot of days is to give yourself a hug. And with that hug, just feel the embrace, feel your embrace, feel your own love. There are days where I like to say, like, whisper something that is lovable about yourself to yourself,
Right.
or to recognize what God sees as lovable within you. And then here, it's maybe a hug, or as you're doing, Ray, sort of this, right? Just sort of like, it's like almost like a soothing embrace.
Right.
You do the Ahava Rabbah. Ahava Rabbah, Ahava Rabbah, Ahavtanu, 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 Adonai Eloheinu. How deeply you have loved us. How deeply, God, you love us. We're grateful that you love us. Adonai Eloheinu. Adonai Eloheinu.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. I have to tell you, the first 5 to 10 times I did that with you, I was sobbing. The tears just flowed. You know, it's so, you can expect there might be a little bit of a reaction. So just letting you know. So, and it's
Yeah.
perfectly okay. So thank you for being with us today. I so
Oh,
appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow on Morning
all right.
Gratitude.
Thank you for having me, Ray. Thanks for
Oh,
being in my life, and wishing everyone a lot of blessings.
thank you. So appreciate it.